We are back with episode 43 of RevivalCast. What's up, Doc? Where we will be discussing our latest blog, which was about flesh mending in Revival. Whoops, I've got my um, volume up on Theory Forge because I've been watching Ombwa play Darkest Dungeon lately. As opposed to having the sound off normally. So we'll be discussing the latest blog, which was on flesh mending. We'll be discussing the thread that we had started by Sword Saint about what we like to see in future blogs, and we'll also be talking about community in square quotes, scare quotes.
Square
Um,
quotes.
yeah, and it's just I would like to hear what everybody thinks of when they think of community and ways that they're thinking about maybe community staying together, how we keep community together, kind of outside of the game, but whatever it means to each person. So we'll get there when we get there. So this latest blog was pretty detailed and meaty. Um, Lots of good food for thought.
Really, I thought it was
Uh,
kind of bony, a little skeletal.
really?
Oh, come on, dude. No,
God,
my
No, it was
puns,
meaty. It was meaty.
puns,
It was not skeletal. You cannot.
my
Oh well, I
puns.
guess they did try to set some bones.
Digs,
That's
please.
twice.
true.
Digs,
That's true.
please.
That's true. I forgot
Actually,
about the bone setting when you said it. That's right.
That's all right.
Broken
That's all right.
bones.
You're forgiven.
I was thinking more about flesh mending than bone knitting, which should be a separate skill, right?
I don't know. Medically, bone is a tissue, so
Any tissue is good. It's
any
not
tissue is good.
okay. Um, so yeah, so we started with, did we start with the bone being broken, or did we start with the bandaging? What?
It was just well, it was just an overview, and then we had an anecdote.
yeah, they kind of
Uh,
discussed, I guess, what the kind of not issue, I guess, what the current status quo is of healing in games, and then moved into the challenges that Revival has in trying to meet their immersion goals, I guess.
yeah,
Right, because they don't want to have uh, instant heals being ubiquitous.
Right.
Magic healing is supposed to be more rare than we're typically seeing in most games. Um, and so this blog was focusing more on the Brogian methods of healing, which would be diagnosing and then using poultices or bandages. Again, they did mention uh, resetting a bone, things like that. Um, what were your favorite parts? Let's start with Sale. What was your favorite part of the blog?
my favorite part. Oh gosh. So my favorite part was actually just kind of a side note, or not even a side note. It was kind of something you had to infer from the actual text of it. But basically, when let me get the names. When Farod is let's see, or no, was it on the boat? Either way, when the chirurgeon was setting the bone and such
Hmm.
on the ship, right?
Hmm.
There was a mention that the injured character would not would not have a scar left should they when they survive, or potentially might not have a scar from the wound, and would they have to reincarnate at any point, they wouldn't have that scar as well, which enforces like a small sort of hint that was floating out there, not hint, but impression which was floating out there beforehand, along the lines of scars effectively marring the soul and not just the body, because it has to be able to translate across multiple bodies in the mortality gate stuff, which I think is really really fascinating, just kind of as a world thing. Um, and so that's my favorite part, which isn't even really about the actual meat of the blog, but I do like the idea. So
Yes,
that's my
Snipe is
answer.
reminding us that that was Jinda, who was the chirurgeon.
Ginger,
That
yeah, yeah.
and Biss, I think, is the name of the patient. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, it was that part's really interesting because it seems like if you so I believe that this was the character whose uh, bone was broken. Their leg had a broken bone, and if it wasn't fixed satisfactorily before Biss dies, then he could reincarnate with a messed up leg. And I don't know if it meant that his leg wouldn't be functioning at all. And then I want to know if he's going to be in a wheelchair or if he's going to, how's he going to be moving around?
That's
Or
a
if
good
Wheelchair.
question.
Yeah,
he
because
would
I mean, the
have,
words that I'm kind of looking at it right now, right? And he says, so his major issue of his leg is now gone, replaced with a healing wound indicator. Now, if he dies, he won't come back with a scarred leg or have to face the hassle of potentially futile quest to find any healer who can remove a scar from his soul that his leg will function. And
yes.
yeah, and that's
So
so
was it function better?
a
Um,
peg leg in the next life. I mean,
I'm really, really, really hoping to see limping characters. So,
I imagine at the very
and
least it would be a limp. Um,
shuffling characters. And then what does that say about arms that are damaged? Is that going to affect combat ability? Well, I mean, I guess limping legs would too, but sword use. He would have been scarred, which would have left him with a debilitating debuff. He wouldn't have been legless, but he would have been, if you will pardon the pun, gimped.
my gimping leg's gone all gimpoid on me.
Um,
yeah.
and so does that gimp come with a limp?
I imagine that's the case.
They have blue pills to cure limp characters?
Oh my. Well, they have stabs, so staves, right? I mean, I'm assuming a stave will at least help you walk. I don't know if it'll help you walk fast, but you can always supplement your bum leg with a surrogate leg, I guess.
Mhm.
Or I guess or that actually made me wonder though too is so you carry that scar or gimp, you carry that gimpiness into your next reincarnation. If you die again without having that addressed, do you
I'm
carry that
assuming it's
scar
stick.
onto the next one, or is your next body kind of a rewrite at that point?
I mean, I think it would stick around, right?
Yeah, because it
Assuming
attaches to the soul, right?
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Well, it also would mean that it would also be an exploitable thing, right? Like you could be really reckless in a fight, die, and then just get yourself dead again to remove at least some of the effect of the debuff, right? You could put time gates and stuff on it, so you couldn't just do it right away, right? And obviously, wanting to repetitively die is not necessarily advised anyway. But like, I think it just makes more sense for it to just stick around, because then it requires another player or an adventure of some sort to deal with it if you so choose to deal with it, or else it just becomes a part of your character, which also is just as good, I think.
Yeah, I
Snipe
think the whole
hunters. Go.
scar thing really raised some questions for me because in the past, the conversation that we'd had about what kills you and then how does resurrection work with that, the example had been given of disease. So if you die from a disease, you can re-embody, reborn, whatever you want to call that, and then you don't have the disease anymore. But we did not have any mention of scarring. So this is a whole new element of gameplay that it's like, no, you don't get a free pass.
Right.
And that makes life suddenly very much more interesting.
Yeah, Snipe Hunter writes in chat, scars will absolutely impact combat abilities, crafting abilities too. A blacksmith with a gimpy arm is going to have trouble in the smithing minigame. And he confirms for Zero that scars will stick with you forever if you don't get them addressed. Yeah, and how those affect the minigame, that's a fascinating aspect too. Even in the blog, we kind of got that the chirurgeons would have to be nimble enough to keep a wound closed with one hand or while they're trying to sew or apply a bandage with the other, something like that.
Right?
So
Well, and then if you think about it, that really elevates their need to, so you need them in combat, you need them in especially in probably larger scale warfare, but they're really going to have to be careful because if they die, even if they can get back quickly, if they suffered like hand trauma, their effectiveness of the next go around is going to be less, which that's a pretty big effect.
Mhm.
Yeah, that would change battle strats. Target the Turgeon.
Yeah. So.
Oh, for sure. We'll always target the healer. I mean, that's
Yeah,
like rule number
you're
one.
supposed to, but
True, nothing's different now.
I mean, the healer is a force multiplier, right? Like that's the entire point. Support characters improve the effectiveness of all other characters on a team, and therefore they should always be targeted first, unless there's a threat to your support character. So
Well, I was going to be really mean.
do
Um,
it,
no, no,
Diggs. I
no, no,
believe
no,
in you.
no, no, no,
this is
no.
me. You can always be mean. I'll laugh.
Yeah, maybe we shouldn't laugh at that yet. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of extra aspects to this. One of the things that the blog mentioned was the knowledge of the healer, and just in terms of making diagnoses or um, being aware of what the problem could be, that might drive healers out of a city so that they could learn more, or possibly it's one thing to be able to make the diagnosis, but you still have to have the resources that you need, like if it's going to be some kind of honey or something. I think the blog mentioned in order to use as a salve. um, are you going to have those resources on hand? um, Different diseases in different areas might require different resources to fix. Um, Maybe you've seen a similar disease in one city, but it looks differently in another city. So, um, lots of
Yeah,
interesting aspects in
and
terms of
and
gathering
on
that.
that topic, or on that kind of nod towards knowledge, I thought it was interesting that the blog specifically referred to this suite of medical flags rather than tags. So we know flags are imply permanency.
Yeah.
So I guess that made me wonder, the character's flesh many skill in the suite of medical flags, characters acquired in their data. So I guess, does that imply that knowledge then can't fall off? Is that I wasn't sure if that implies that the character just happened to pin those skills so they won't decay, or is there something else going on that results in that knowledge or ability that ties into the mini game not being lost for them? Which I asked in the blog, and no one answered. Snipe. Just saying.
Okay. Shots fired.
Oh,
Uh, Hopefully, we will get an answer here. Um, One thing I do want to mention, just as a kind of marker in time,
Okay.
we do have something that's showing up in chat introducing chat replay. So I'm hoping that maybe when we replay this particular video, we will finally be able to see chat along with it. This will be a test run to see if that happens. That should be fun.
so in
Um,
the event that it doesn't, that Monty has graciously answered Zero's question, which and it basically goes that you might lose skill at addressing a wound associated with particular knowledge, but the knowledge itself is permanent. So you always have at least an attempt at dealing with it. I guess by extension, or rather, by extension, you always have an attempt, but you still might fail, right, based on your practice um, and whatnot.
yeah, part of me was wondering if so part of me was wondering if you might have people that focus just on gathering the knowledge to make diagnoses and not so much the skill of how to, but it seems like um, along with how to whatever the diagnosis was, you also get information about how to fix the malady. So I was thinking, well, maybe since that's but having the skill to pull off the fixing is another matter. So maybe you'll have the master chirurgeons who are standing behind the novice or the intern or the resident who's telling them, so here, You've got the nimble. I'm old and feeble now. My hands don't work. I've got arthritis. You, young whippersnapper, you can follow my directions and sew this fellow up. I don't know. Um, I wonder what other roles we might have in the game besides just hands-on, hands-on healer.
Well, I
One
can
one
think of
kind
some
of.
basic stuff. Or go ahead, sir.
I was just gonna say there was one other thing. I wondered if the player, the Shogun, is working on a patient, is he the only one, or he or she the only one who can actually interact with that person at the time, or can you have multiple ones working on multiple injuries, leg, torso, arm? I just kind of popped into my head.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
I do have an alt in mind who's gonna try to be as scarred as possible. So,
So that's the direction you're taking, huh? I was thinking you were gonna make like a sadistic surgeon, but okay, that
hmm
works.
hmm
But yeah, I
Hmm.
think even if you don't want to do hands-on medical stuff, right? At the very um, think about I guess like medical coders and stuff who do basically effective diagnostics, right? Like just as a preliminary diagnostic thing for prepping the actual surgery team or the people who are going to be doing the treatment work. So I think I mean, assuming you set up some sort of clinic, right? Just having one really efficient diagnostician is not a bad call, unless the game information is set up in such a way that all diagnosticians have the treatment skill, or all people who have the treatment skill necessarily have the diagnostic knowledge for it. You know, as um, if that
Ooh,
parallel isn't always there, then I could see a dedicated diagnostician being useful. Um,
we actually do want to allow multiplayer surgery, but it comes down to making sure the minigame's content base is wide enough. That's awesome. Yeah, something that you were saying, Sale, had was reminding me of Bones, the TV series,
oh yeah.
where you have forensics and you have your squints coming in to try and diagnose how this person died, but you
Oh
could
man.
do a similar thing about existing maladies. And I was also wondering about perhaps another role opening up specifically for people who are going out to find the reagents
Oh sure.
for medicine specifically. Like that's their specific focus is gathering reagents for medicines.
Oh yeah.
That's
That's a good question, actually. That kind of popped up in chat. Is it possible to have to go back after surgery if the doctor's messed up, and
clearly
and
that's.
can a Shuriken repair damage like that? From an amateur surgeon.
But that's what it said in the blog. That's she
Oh,
tried
okay.
the first time, right, and it
That's true. Yeah,
didn't work,
yeah.
and so she had to go in and the pain levels, screaming from pain. I want to make the
Yeah,
character
I couldn't
do that.
really do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had when I was in grade school, like maybe sixth grade, fifth or sixth grade, I was playing basketball down the street and jammed my finger. That happens from time to time. And a few weeks later, my older brother looked at my finger and he could see that the bone was out of alignment. And he was like, your finger wasn't just jammed, it was broken. And, there's part of it kind of poking off kilter. They're going to break that again and reset it for you. And I'm like, no, I I can bend it. It's not causing me any pain. I'm not just gonna leave my hand in front of them for them to break it on purpose. That's not happening. Um, and I never did get it fixed, and it looks a little funky, but it's fully functional. I'm no.
Yeah, yeah. And now Faye's brought up, a surgeon sabotaging a scar fix intentionally, right? So yeah, which I imagine they could do. So I could just see sadistic surgeons. After all, yes, they've gone through their training, their medical school, just so they can engage in their bloodlust and and
Oh God.
screw up surgeries after surgery and move towns a bit.
I was gonna say you have to deal with reputation a little if you're not careful.
Or you do it as a battlefield doctor, right? Because then it's like, oh well, his chances of survival were pretty low to begin with.
Oh my gosh.
It was just a flesh wound. No, it was infected.
Oh man.
Snipe says, yeah, they'll want to find reputable alchemists to get things like pain-killing draughts for sure.
Yeah, and that's actually what I was going to mention. As if you didn't want to do surgery and you didn't want to do diagnostics, you could still learn some of the basic stuff and then just focus on developing poultices, treatments. The refining the reagents that someone's bringing into the actual treatment equipment for certain things, which would be totally viable and not require you to be hands-on. It basically like like modern psychiatrists have fairly complete medical training, but they don't actually do surgery or anything. Something like that.
Right.
I want to see a mechanic where if you pass the pain threshold of the character starts screaming. You can't do anything. That's just being a moat. You have characters on the battlefield, and you're close to death. The character just starts screaming. That should be a thing. We should have hospitals of screaming characters. That would be awesome.
Well, eventually they'd have to pass out.
That too.
Just saying.
Snipe Hunter says Chirurgeon could totally, deliberately botch a surgery. They can't prevent that, even if they wanted to, because we're playing the minigame. And let's see, something about complicates surgery because it promotes bleeding in revival.
With respect to alcohol.
Alcohol, yeah.
Because it dilates your blood vessels.
Terradin was saying that, yeah, it works as a painkiller for surgery too. Huh? Oh, he says they'll thrash about in the surgery game if they exceed their pain threshold. Woohoo!
Oh shit! God. So this is gonna be the advanced form of operation. Great.
Yeah.
Now you have a moving target to deal with instead of just the sitting buzzer.
Or somebody trying to smite you with their sword as you're
right. They're just trying to punch your eye out, and you're like, "Dude, I'm trying to fix your leg. Stop."
Hold him down. Hold him down. Yeah.
Here's a leather strap. Bite it. Here's some more leather straps. They're comfy. We're gonna go to work. But yeah. But yeah, it sounds like the repairing old wounds and stuff. Like if someone botches a surgery either intentionally or unintentionally, and then it gets to the point of being a scar, it seems like you would need a more advanced knowledge than just what the surgeon would need to have treated it in the first place to be able to mitigate or remove that particular scar. By the sounds of it, I don't know how extensive or how deep that goes, but it does seem like you'd need something a little more high octane than just whatever was ailing you before.
Yeah, and I wonder what the graphics will be for zoning in on these diagnostics. Everything from rashes and things like that. I just wonder if we'll be like, oh no, I would never be a doctor in Revival because I just can't take.
I think depending on how graphic they make the minigames, which they could totally make them graphic. I could see some people very quickly changing their choice of occupation or.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Gross. He says they're gonna be gross. All right.
We knew that was coming, right? We did know that.
Yeah,
real boobos, real arterial spatter.
Thankfully, we don't have smell-o-vision yet, so.
Can we turn off sound so I don't have to hear screaming?
Well, you can
screaming.
Do that
I can live with. It'll cover the sound of the squelching as you're.
No, it's the screaming that's going to make it a no-go for me.
But yeah, Polaris, you can always just mute your actual system volume.
That's what I'm thinking. It's the only way it could work.
Yeah.
Or if you have to get surgery, just all right. I'm gonna mute. Tell me when it's over.
So are you going to maybe reevaluate because usually you play a healer, as we've heard, Polaris. So are you going to change that now going into this?
Well, I was changing it all anyway because there was really no such thing.
That's true. Yeah.
with this conversation and this blog, it's kind of like, well, except for the screaming. No, 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 no.
Oh, cool. But yeah, it sounds like exciting. And actually, that answered my one of my requests for seeing a blog. I kind of forgot that it was going to be a blog on that, so I was pretty happy to see it. The topic of healers, because I think it's been a pretty interesting one that's had a lot of kind of casual discussion. How is healing going to work in a game where instant magic healing doesn't exist or isn't common? I guess I should say.
Yeah. Well, I mean, anything.
Yeah, I actually really appreciate that part of it.
Yeah,
I figured bandages would be important. So that the quick and dirty method of some kind of healing is band-aids makes sense to me. Some version of bandages.
Sure.
It's
sure.
not going to be a real super fix, but it could get you back on your feet and out the door.
Yeah, or just sustain you long enough until you can get proper treatment or something.
Right.
Taking it to a qualified surgeon.
Right.
Yeah. I could be a band-aid person.
And really, what that says about reputation and wanting to go to be referred to a reputable surgeon instead of a hack.
Literally a hack.
Literally a hack. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So anybody else wants to mention about the blog before we move on to the suggestions for future blogs?
I mean, I was just going to kind of sum up and say any form of healing that isn't just negative DPS is pretty cool in my book. So
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, definitely.
Because that's all it is in other games. It's just negative.
And I might actually end up being able to be good at it because I'm a terrible healer in every other game. Terrible. I've literally tried it and let entire raids die as I sit there trying to figure out which heal I should use. So a mini game is much more my style for healing someone.
That's funny. That's kind of the way I feel about driving, because I don't drive because as I'm going through a stoplight, I'm like, it's yellow. Should I go through? Should I not go through? Should I go through? Should I
I
not?
hate that feeling.
Well, in Alaska, the answer is always go through.
Oh, my
Yellow
God.
lights don't mean shit. Sorry.
Oh, God. No, that's the worst feeling.
Just as it turns red, I should have stopped. I shouldn't have stopped. I should have stopped. It's like I just don't want to have to go through it. And in California and Los Angeles specifically, we've got traffic signs that are not traffic signs, parking signs that you can't tell what they mean at any time of day. Was I supposed to park here or not park here? Can I park here? Too much traffic. So we got this great we got this great thread from Sword Saint asking future blogs that would be cool to see. Which ones would you suggest? And he had Day in the Life of a Prostitute, Day in the Life of a Wandering Gambler. Fascinating. A Thief. Well, we kind of had something like a thief. I forget what the exact name of that one was.
No, we had a pickpocket.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
And general scoundrel. That's what we're.
Day in the Life of a Wandering Mender. The Middle Ages did have people who traveled the wilderness just mending people's clothes for a price.
And we have to make a decision. Almost let us know that this coming week's blog is a day in the life. So yay!
Yeah.
Cool.
Ooh.
And I think this one was this one in before we knew? No, I think this was on the 25th. So we already knew this was going to be about a Churgeon. Did we know that? Or did he pick it from this list?
I think it was already going to be one.
Yeah. Day in the Life of a Bounty Hunter, which is similar to a mercenary. But what were some of the... April 1st is coming up. We could get Day in the Life of a WoW player. That's from Serbayu. What ones kind of spoke out to you? Suggestions from other people?
I actually really am interested to see a day in the life of a slaver. I think it is such a potentially controversial topic as it is, and it's kind of unique in a lot of ways to any game that I've played. So I really would like to see how that'll play out as a player character. Um, yeah, it's definitely one of the ones that's a little bit more, or I would think would generate a lot of conversation.
Hmm.
Hmm. I'd kind of like to see, somebody's already suggested it in the list. I'd kind of like to see a day, if it's going to be a day in the life, then I'd like to see a day in the life of somebody who died. So
Right.
what's it like to traverse Anime's realm?
I like that. Yeah.
You
Hmm.
know, so you're Joe Blow and you've just done what da 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 da, and you either got ganked or a wolf got you or something, and you died at the very beginning of the blog. And so then the blog meat of it is how you traverse the realm or something.
Hmm. Hmm.
There's probably other things, but I think the most notable thing about that thread, besides being a fantastic idea, is how much systems overlaps with a day in the life.
Hmm.
And I just, trying to think of things that's like, well, I'm interested in this system, but it gets covered over here. And this story kind of tells how the system's going to work. So that was just kind of a really interesting way for it to go back and forth. Anyway, go
Yes.
for it.
Hmm. Sale, what ones leapt out for you?
I actually like Donnie Yergo's Day in the Life of a Guardsman. Um,
Yes.
I imagine it's going to be a little bit different based on the actual city, but like I think just something on that template would be very nice. I actually also like read about that Seinfried's Day in the Life of a Carpenter, because I kind of think carpentry is really cool, and I imagine in Revival it will also be really cool. Um, just also because I kind of want to see as like an open challenge how many tools of the trade Snipe Hunter intends to actually pull in, because there's like so many different tools involved in carpentry and woodworking. It's insane. It's so
Yeah,
crazy.
that one interests me on a very personal level, just as someone who likes woodworking. So I'll enjoy that one.
One of the things this calls to mind as you were talking about tools is because I'm often fashion over function in MMORPGs. One thing that I'm interested in seeing is different toolkits and how they might, um, graphically, how they might display for us on our person. So, what can we tell about a person based on what kind of backpack they're carrying, or um, maybe a person isn't carrying a sword, and that's the thing that defines them from a distance. Maybe we can tell that they have on their person a doctor's kit or a carpenter's kit. That could be cool. I'm thinking, or what I liked from the blog, the suggestion I liked was from Sword Saint, Dan the Life of a Street Entertainer, Dancer.
Yes.
Oh yeah, busker. That'd be cool.
Mhm. Busking, I'm really, really, really interested in
That's a
hearing
good
detail.
move.
No, actually, I agree. I think that'd be really, really cool to see, because it would also give us a chance to have a revised look at kind of just some like some particulars of various entertainment systems, right? I mean, because I know a lot of people here have an affinity for the Star Wars Galaxy's entertainer
Hmm.
um, profession, um, and so either seeing what the revised plans are for music, or the minigame for dancing, etc., would I think be really, really cool. So yeah, dig it.
Um, yeah, you just was it you or was it? Oh, it was Auntie. So, Auntie had suggested day in the life of a waste management technician, which reminds me. So she had this thread about where does the poop go, and then in this latest blog, one of the um, reagents for a remedy was boiled cow urine. Is that right? Some kind of cow urine. I think it was boiled. Um, and that was having her think about that again. Um, so yeah, I'd love to see a blog about a day in the life of waste management, using the urine for curing, using I don't know, urine for dyes. We've got, of course, fertilizer. That could be fascinating.
Yeah, the reality is it's kind of a challenge. What blogs do I want? Well, I want all of them.
Yes.
Tell me everything. I want
Yes.
every day in the
Yes.
life. I want to see all your
Yes.
back end systems. you know.
um, yeah.
So
So
yeah,
it was very interesting. Now that you mentioned that flesh mending is not magic. Because I was expecting that to be a type of magical healing. Like I was expecting, I don't know if I have another word for that, but like flesh crafting or something like that.
Yeah, I
Um,
kind of thought it was related to golems.
yeah. Um, and I think it is related to golems, just more mechanically than we had anticipated, maybe. But um, yeah, I wanna. Oh, day in the life of a mask maker. Wow, I'm very interested in that mask making skill too. So yeah, it's just order. Do we have enough weeks in the year to keep us
Yeah, really.
occupied?
Well, clearly the answer is that we should just get a blog every day.
Clearly.
log a day.
I mean,
Yeah,
you know, the word output of the team is clearly enough to meet that threshold. So no, don't actually do that. You guys, your time is
yeah.
killing
You guys,
people. Don't do that.
I hear they have a game they need to finish too, so I'm not
Something
sure.
like that.
I,
Yeah.
I, I have a feeling there is no chance of that happening.
Let's just make the apprentice do it.
There you go. That's the answer.
But yeah, no, this is cool because maybe we will get some consensus among those of us who are in the forums, and maybe we'll be able to see things like Dan the Life of a Slaver earlier than we anticipated, or Dan the Life of a Mask Maker hadn't even been on my radar, and again, like Waste Man, and just various things that people have thrown out kind of
Yeah, there
were
are a
not.
lot of really good suggestions. I'd love to see more about the maritime game. I'd love to see, sailing in general, how the mechanics of that work. I'd love to see, for my list, I'd love to see, cult worshippers of very whatever god they worship. What is that secret life a bit like, or what defines them, or what do they gain from it? Your normal combatant, which is kind of like Donnie's, day in the life of a city guard. There's certain kind of more mundane things I'd like to see. Hell, I wouldn't complain if I saw a day in the life of a baker.
Yeah, well, we have the cook,
We had the
We
cook,
do have
yeah,
the
that I
cook, sorry.
agreed.
So,
but
Yeah.
sorry,
Secret
pastry chef.
Society. Haha. Secret Society, that could be really learning about the mechanics, like you said, of somebody in a cult and
Right.
going through
Right.
the
Yeah.
mechanics of the Secret Society would be cool. Um,
Day in the
yeah,
life of a guild registrar. Not necessary, but just funny.
I wouldn't want to be the registrar actually.
Probably
That
pays
actually
well.
You can hope.
maybe I
I'd
just
hope.
see a lot of bullying when I think about that. We're
Fair enough.
coming first. You have to get us an estate. You have to. We need these perks. Uh, Pain in the butt.
I think it would be even simpler than that. They'd first be like, you sure you want to name it that?
You're not allowed. You're gonna let us
your
add triple X's.
your guild emblem is what?
Yeah. I think we have the guild emblems kind of under wraps, but the naming might
Oh,
be
they're
more
constrained.
problematic than that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, can I segue from guilds
Sure.
into community?
Sure, let's do it.
Seems like a
And
good spot to do it.
yeah, I don't know that I was specifically thinking of guilds. I mean, guilds are a part of community, but when I think of guilds, I think of them doing raids and things like that. Um, and when I think of community, I'm thinking more of um, ways to keep players together that aren't really tied to um, helping each other complete a challenge like a raid or defeat a dungeon or gather armor. And I mean, I guess all of those things could add to community, but I'm kind of thinking of when I think of community, I think of other things like parties or podcasts or keeping activities, keeping us together in the forums or streaming, things like that. Um, and so I think it was a few weeks ago, I was in a conversation with Sailkite, and I was mentioning that I have for my characters um, a Facebook account and a Twitter account. Um, and I use those to showcase my screenshots because since 2000 or so, I think when I started playing Anarchy Online, especially, I started taking lots and lots of screenshots. I felt like I was on vacation in this beautiful world, and this is where I am. I'm at this beach. Look at this sunset, um, and I had all these pictures of the in-game world, but no place to really showcase them. Actually, when I got into the game industry, one of the uh, segments that I was on as I was ramping up from I want to write this novel to ooh, I want to make a game was I want to make a graphic novel. Um, and so having these social media outlets where I can showcase my screenshots has been fun. That's one of the things that I do with the social media. But I also like being a part of podcasts for other games that I've been in. Once the game is live, after we have a podcast, we often meet up in the game somewhere afterwards and have a little party. And that's been fun. So, those are the kinds of things that I'm looking forward to in the future. What happens after Revival Cast? Might we jump into the game and meet up somewhere? Or we're gonna have to let people know in advance that we're going to Anacatha next week instead of gonna be on Crowns Rock, that kind of thing. But what do you guys think of when you think of community? Let's start with Polaris.
I think the first time that you brought it up, where my mind went was the community of players. So I think the way that word worked for me was pretty much the player community and outside of game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I would have used maybe a different word. I'll have to think about that
Mm-hmm.
um, for the community of players within the game. But when you use the word, the very first time you brought it up, what I thought of was the player community and generally how it is outside of the game. And so
So give
it's
me
just
some
kind of interesting
examples.
to compare notes on how we might define that.
Mhm. So give me some examples of what you think of as community outside of the game. What in what realms, in what ways,
Well,
what
for
would they be?
example, my old WoW guild, I have not played WoW in years, but I'm still a senior member of that guild. The guild is still very active. Um, and so they have real life get-togethers once a year. Um, they have events in game that I'll do whatever I can to support it outside of the game, but I'm not actually in there to do stuff.
Hmm.
They tend to raise money for charitable organizations and stuff like that. And they're busy on Facebook and Twitter and all kinds of other social media things, just kind of chatting away because those things now replace the website. Back in the day, website forums were kind of, where everybody did that chattery community thing. And now it's kind of shifted to Facebook.
And so you have a social group that was an in-game guild, but it's still a group that's together, even though not
Yes.
necessarily playing the game.
Yep. 10 years later. Yep. And met in real life.
Yeah, and that's fascinating because it's a it's a WoW community that's almost not connected to WoW
Right.
anymore.
But early WoW days, especially, people made a lot of. It was exciting and different. It was an MMO for the mainstream and filthy casuals. But it was. I still have friends that I talk with from my Australian guild that I raided with for years. A couple of them have visited. wasn't able to make one's wedding, but I tried, but work conflict came up. But I mean, so yeah, it's not hard to have a community of people, players. I'm still friends with people from Rift, and there's still kind of and then there's people I play with like Arcade, and there's communities that form. So I guess groups of players that that exist outside of just the game environment is a good example of a community, or that maybe crosses those boundaries, I should say, freely. I don't know. Revival's community. I mean, we have our forum. Lots of people on the forums. We have the founder chat. Discord chat in general. The people who tune in for RevivalCast. And oftentimes I see the people who watch. Some of the people who watch RevivalCast I never see on the forums or the anywhere else, but they still pop in every weekend for it. So I don't.
Mhm.
But I think at best, or in the best case scenario, community definitely would be one that is interacting both in and outside of the game.
Yes.
Mhm. Mhm. Sale, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, so I know I did like a mind blow thing, right, when you were mentioning the Twitter and Facebook stuff, because that's just something I would never actually personally do, right? I mean, and I've heard your explanation of it, and I suppose it makes sense to me, but it's still not something I'd ever um, probably personally endeavor to do, right? Because if I'm thinking, I want to share screenshots, or I want to, report on something that happened in a game, like I tend to think that forums and Reddit and stuff are pretty efficient for that, and so I'd probably just do it
I
like
can't.
that.
Can you do? Well, screenshots for Reddit would be weird.
Well, I mean, you
But do a
can
link.
hook up Imgur galleries and stuff. It's not impossible, but like I tend to think of those things as efficient, and so I'd probably, if I wanted to share screenshots with a large audience or something like that, or if I wanted to share like in-game and story stuff, I'd probably just make a story and put it on the forum, or you know,
Well, maybe your
some
character should get more hip with this social media thing.
Yeah.
dude. Okay, for one, the player playing the character is not hip with social media. I've not logged into Facebook in probably 2 years. I do not have a Twitter. I do not have an Instagram. I've never actually been on Instagram. I have no idea what it does or how it works, aside from the fact that it's
Yeah,
really
your
basic.
name goes out on Twitter. Your name goes out on Twitter every week.
I
Just
know,
you
but I
don't
don't
actually
have a
have a
Twitter.
Twitter account.
There's nothing. I have never typed a legitimate
Tweet.
hashtag in my life. I've made plenty of fake hashtags for the giggles. But yeah, anyway, I am not hip with the social media, but I understand forums and IRC and shit, so I just stick with
Yeah.
that, like a
Yeah,
proper
totally.
Philistine. Uh,
And we have the wiki, which plenty of people uh,
investigating
have been helping with
and working on. Yeah, actually, it's
and
true.
worked on it. And as we kind of roll that out further and try to get a little bit more open, I mean, we're fairly behind, and we're trying. It's a side project for everyone, obviously, but it's another example though of the community. I mean, there's people who want to collect and centralize the knowledge, so it's easier to present to new people coming in to pull them into the community. So
Sure, sure. Yeah, I mean, and as far as community proper goes, like I tend to think there are a couple of different strata, right? Or because people engage on different levels, right? I mean, so there's people who, very much, I guess, like Polaris's experience will end up kind of forming or falling in with a group of just players that they enjoy playing with or were helpful to them in a game or have similar interests, right? In the case of like role players and stuff in past games, right? They usually form pretty strong communities and whatnot.
yeah,
And so, I mean, that's sort of like the smallest, most local thing, right? Where people just have 2 to 5 folks that they just play the game with, and they talk, and they hang out on comms or whatever, and it's a pretty good time. That's the group that they interact with, and then if they're looking for anything else beyond that, they usually just go to um, Reddit or forums, or maybe a fan site or something. Maybe they look at a streamer, or a YouTube content producer who covers the game, that kind of thing, to get heads up on stuff that's happening or whatnot. And that's kind of just their scope of the world, and it works, right? And then you got people who are more like us in the current context, where we engage um, out of game, in a pretty active way, be that on the forums or in something like Discord in this case, being something of a novelty compared to other games, but have that kind of um, bent towards out of game interaction as well, discussing things more publicly rather than just theory crafting with friends on Friday night and stuff like that, which I think is also equally valid. It's just at a different scope. And then of course you have the really big guilds and stuff, and fans for individual streamers and whole big collectives around that and all that, which is I think cool. But I mean, in terms of what it actually means, like I think like anything that's related to the game and is in some way social, I think satisfies a definition of community that makes sense.
Yes.
And then it just depends on the individual person to do the thing that makes the most sense for them, right? Like, for instance, I would never make a character Facebook page, right? But it makes sense to you, Diggs, and it makes sense to a couple folks in chat, which is cool, I think, and it works, and it enriches the net community, right? Like the gestalt of the whole thing, in a way that I think is valuable, irrespective of whether it's personally valuable. And similarly, like people make machinima and shit for games that are like Halo and whatever, right? Like who the fuck are what's red versus blue? Who the fuck are Rooster Teeth, right? And then it goes off and becomes its own thing, but it still just started as dudes making content for a game, right? And making Halo machinima, without even really being particularly Halo-esque or oriented in its scope. So, I mean, I think it all works, and I think everything that, anything that, like I said, meets those two requirements, just it works, and I think it should be considered community and as, good for the community to do it. I don't know.
Yeah, one of the things I'm wondering about is as I'm making Darkest Dungeon videos and reacting to Ombla when he's playing Darkest Dungeon, is what would that be like for streaming Revival or making YouTube vids of playing Revival? I think that's something I might bring up and chat with more directly with Snipe Hunter when he's on at the end of March. But yeah, I was just wondering yesterday morning or something like that. What would streaming Revival be like? Um,
It's gonna be so weird, dude.
what does
Like,
that like crafting or
like the pace of the game is just potentially so not like streamable.
Well, I think we have to universally agree.
Yeah,
Like all
I
the
agree.
revival community will have to agree that the very first stream that goes out has to be someone doing the surgery minigame.
That's what I was about to say.
Yeah.
I was about to say that.
Really?
It's like welcome to Revival,
It's
guys
not
screaming
gonna
in the
be-
background.
it's
It's like
not
this is
gonna
a
be a hot
player,
tub
and
party? It's
Yeah.
not going to be Donnie's hot tub party in the party mats. Are you kidding me?
that's a good
Like-
point. The party mats would pull in some other players too, but
I think that actually has to be first, just because it came first. Like that
That's true.
100%. It's on the Revival Library website. It was a world first. I think it has to be the
It
very
was,
first.
yeah.
So, and then we can, and then here's how it works. There's the party mats. Everyone gets wasted. Someone trips.
million to one
breaks
shot
their-
doc.
breaks their arm on a table, right?
I heard
And
another.
then they have to perform surgery after the party with a drunk doctor, and it's very gory and visceral. Yeah, I think this works just fine. This is perfect. This is canonical. It's gonna happen.
Well, Serb mentions that the sex minigame has to be included too. So I guess if the doctor will be PC, the doctor can be a female, doctor like Chesty LaRue or something, and and after the surgery, then they can go ahead and work their way into the sex minigame.
Right, because I don't have any money to pay for this impromptu surgery. So I may as well give you a buff to improve your future
Literally.
hours in the game, because that's all I can offer you.
Thanks for saving my life. I can't pay for it, but as you saw, I've played with the slider tabs a lot in the character creation. So
Mhm.
Yes, precisely. Yes. It's good. It's good. I think this works. I think this is a good way to introduce the game to people.
Diggs, one of the things that you had mentioned with regard to community included in-game stuff, and responding to some of that, I think we need to see what in-game festivals, events, holidays, all that stuff is going to be before um, before coming up with what's missing. I have every confidence that players will absolutely fill whatever niche is missing from
Yeah.
those kinds of in-game events.
Yeah. Sure. Oh, absolutely. Or they'll rally behind one or
Right.
two
Yeah.
really strongly, right? I mean, because already, like I mentioned it 1 or 2 shows ago, that there's already a fairly strong um, server identity, at least as far as Blackwell and Goratul
Right.
for NA go. Right, like Goratul currently has something of like a fairly strong or public role playing bent to it. As far as a lot of the people who have spoken up on the forums and kind of worn their Goratul tag with pride, whereas Blackwell is perhaps
You mean
a bit
Bestwell, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
more.
don't try to make it sound like Goratel here is unique and bragging here. I hear Bestwell all the time. Oh,
Well,
sorry, Zero, you weren't good enough to get on Bestwell.
This is the first time I've heard of Bestwell. That's
oh,
funny.
it's a meme. Don't you worry, it's a real meme. Um, but yeah, like there's already a strong sense of server identity, and I can very easily see particular servers getting really behind 1 or 2 holidays or whatever, or certain types of events, just based on the storylines and like how boisterous certain players get around them. Because like if you get a streamer, right, like let's just assume for the argument that there's a streamer who somehow knows how to stream revival in a way that people enjoy, right? And so they stream some sort of party crash or something, or maybe something a little more sensible in world, for a particular holiday event in a city that their character lives in or that they own property in or whatever, right? And then all the people who are on that server or who follow that streamer, right, like take up the meme banner, and they say that XYZ festival is best festival, right? And then on another server, there's been a fairly strong grassroots movement for some other festival, and so then there's this kind of inter-server play going on, which I think would be really cool, right? I mean, it sort of calls back to mind, really old Alliance versus Horde kind of pissing contests, or the classic like planet side faction identity stuff, which I think is really cool. And I think that having sort of competition and stuff like that inside, maybe not competition, like I'm trying to think of the right word, but having that kind of stuff in a game, I think actually is very valuable to enhancing like the overall character and like sense of community. So I think there's a good shot for that stuff becoming really cool, if players run with it.
Definitely.
One,
Yeah, and,
one,
and because the servers can develop differently, yeah, I think that's a valid point. Sorry.
yeah, one hope that the devs were saying, I think was saying he hopes will happen, or Snipe Hunter, they hope will happen is that different servers will have different holidays
Oh, sure.
that develop,
Yeah.
specifically on each server. Sale, you had me thinking of one server developing some kind of Burning Man.
That'd be so
Like,
cool.
you know, um,
Oh, that'd be sick.
I mean, who knows?
Cthulhu Day or week.
Who
Cthulhu
knows where it
week.
could go? Yeah.
Yeah, or something. I don't know. Maybe it wouldn't be Cthulhu. That's a little eldritch, but yeah, oh, that'd be sick. That'd be great.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, no, I'm just interested. I think we will have all of the types of communities popping up from that we've seen previously from other games. It'll just be very interesting to me to see what new ways will pop up. Um, what new ways will pop up for Revival specifically to take care of Revival mechanics and features. Um, Well, I think that wraps us up. We're at the top of the hour. Um, and I can't remember what we have coming up next week. I think we might be free next week. I don't know if I have a series of topics. Lethality was supposed to join us today, but he ended up getting tied up by an Oscar party because I guess tonight is Oscar night. I am always impressed by how beautifully made Sale's bed is. I think he does not sleep on that bed. I think that's a guest bedroom.
Could be.
Um, and so hopefully we can coerce, nudge lethality to join us next week. We are planning to have Snipe Hunter on for the last Sunday in March, I believe.
Sweet.
And that should be it. Uh, Thanks for showing up, everybody, and we'll see you next time.